And it made such an atmosphere for the game. And of course, yeah, with a little help from above, we didn't lose it in those circumstances. I mean, Wolverhampton, you know, were a much bigger club than Coventry in those days, and they had brought masses of people over expecting to be able to see the game. And they all did see the game, 51,500 people.
I mean, you could have killed for a ticket. And the ground was absolutely jam-packed. And the atmosphere, I mean, we couldn't be, and when we'd won the game and we knew we were going up, I mean, I've never felt a feeling like that before. It was the sort of thing in weak people would have induced a heart attack, you know. But it carried us for months afterwards, that did, you know. We were so excited about seeing the big teams and meeting the big boys, who we used to beat in the Premier League and First Division. It was the bread and butter sides that we had trouble with, but we used to give the big teams, always gave them a good game.
The Jimmy Hill era lasted 6 years. He resigned to join ITV Sport in 1967. Despite the shock of losing an inspirational leader, the club would stay in the top league for another 34 years, and they made further improvements to the ground in 1968, although they hadn't planned to before a fire gutted the main stand.
During that first season in the First Division, in March, there was a major fire at the stadium, and the main stand, the 1936 main stand, was burnt down, or substantially burnt down, after a fire. Now the fire was caused by, there was a reserve game on one evening, and the theory is that a lighted cigarette fell down between the wooden seats and burnt the rubbish that had accumulated over many years and created quite a big fire.
The difficulty was underneath the stand was a suite of offices, storerooms and so on, and the fire had started there and spread up into the stand. So we had to get into the stand itself and tackle the fire, which was very difficult. It was a bit of a wreck. The main damage you could see from where we were the seating area. Around about a third to a half of the seating area was destroyed. And of course all the offices and storerooms underneath the stand as well was destroyed. One of the members of staff did come up to us during the fire and want to know if any of the cups had been destroyed, and we said no, the fire hadn't reached the kitchen.
The problem was, in 10 days' time, they had Manchester United arriving for one of the biggest games in the club's history. And somehow they managed to patch up with some scaffolding and what have you, patch up that stand so that the patrons could be seated, and 10 days later they had 47,000 in the ground, the second biggest gate in the club's history.
When I first arrived, of course there was just a blank space there where the stand had been, and so my first 2 weeks there with the agency, worked in a caravan in front of the Sky Blue stand, because of course there was no office space. But then when I went back on a full-time basis, we had a house at the end of King Richard Street. I started off in a bedroom, and then I moved down to the kitchen, where Neil's office was, Neil Solomon's office, and from there watched the newsstand going up.
That summer they decided to demolish the remainder of the stand and rebuild it, rebuild a new main stand. Again, they did it over the close season, and it was ready. I think they had to postpone 2 home games, to enable the stand to be finished.
Oh, it was amazing, yes. I mean, you used to arrive in the morning and there was a little bit more added to it, and in no time at all it was finished. It was wonderful. And to actually then move into proper offices after being in a caravan and a little house, it was just wonderful. There was so much space we didn't know what to do with ourselves.
The 70s were almost as dramatic as the 60s. Coventry would clinch a place in Europe and even beat Bayern Munich at Highfield Road, albeit after a 6-1 defeat in Germany in the first leg of their second-round Fairs Cup match. The decade started with a bang as Willie Carr set up Ernie Hunt for arguably the best goal ever scored at Highfield Road, the infamous donkey kick.
Couldn't believe what he'd done, you know. No one's done it really. I don't think anyone's done it since.
We couldn't believe what we'd seen, and it was only really afterwards that we realised that this was an epic moment in the life of football at Coventry.
Absolute amazement. I mean, because he was a cheeky player. He was always a cheeky bloke. If he was on talking on television, on the radio, you could see the humour coming through, you know. And for him to do a cheeky thing like flicking the ball up like that and for it to be whipped into the net was absolutely... We couldn't believe it, you know. It's one of those things you sort of rerun in your mind over and over again. And I dare say, if he did it another 100 times, it wouldn't have gone in again.
I was behind the goal when that was scored. When they actually took the kick, we wondered what they were doing because Willie Carr stood over the ball with his feet either side of the ball, and you think, what's he doing? And he flicked it up, and when it went in, amazing, absolutely amazing. And I think the really sort of amazing thing to me is that afterwards, they said that they took it in training and didn't score one.
And it just, boom, straight over the top, straight in the far corner, and the place just erupted. You know, it was all these one-off things, and it just worked, and it was absolutely magical. Who's the
Hunt! Oh, what a goal! Well, they don't come much better than that. Right out of the book, and on the first line too.
My first memory of Highfield Road is walking up these steps here, and the last few steps before coming out to look at the ground, and the sunshine starts to sort of filter down the stairway there, and as I came over the top, I just remember looking out absolutely astonished that it was in colour. Because we'd only ever had black and white telly at home, and I'd only ever seen Football Match of the Day in black and white. And you know, the pitch was green, the sky was blue, it was August, it was sunny, the players were all warming up, both teams, and the supporters everywhere. It was just fantastic. It was in colour, and that was my first memory of Highfield Road 35 years ago, and been hooked ever since. My favourite player of all time was Tommy Hutchinson. And he was so silky smooth with his skills, and you know, razzle dazzle Tommy was the cry that went up. And I haven't seen very many players that show that kind of class on a football pitch.
Oh, he's a wizard with the ball. Yeah, wizard he was. Yeah.
He was a good winger, and he could outrun anybody, I reckon, in them days. I used to love Tommy. Not a little whippet he was, well, a big whippet really, but you know.
When I came here, we were bottom of the league. We went 14 games in the trot without losing, and from then on, not only the first team but the youth team did really well. And I think the year that I left, even I think it was about 12 or 14 of the youth team actually went on to play in the first division. The main one that stands out for me is when we played here. We played Liverpool, and that night we went top of the league, beat them 1-0. I scored the goal, and I think it was the only goal I scored that season, mind. But I think that was a big doing in me actually being picked to play for Scotland.